This is chapter 29, marching out. They're marching out to battle. Despite having two capable wizards, Melina chose to ride out to the feudals, and by the time her armies arrived, the human allies had lost half their fighting potential, and the unit headed by Basila casually marched towards the Veraganus soldier, and the round formation neutralized flanking, and the quick action with their shields protected them from incoming arrows from the enemy. And the battle lasted for 6 hours, but in the end they were victorious despite being outnumbered 2-1. The one spearheaded by Melina was a mounted force, and its spearhead formation crashed into the Veragadon infantry from side to side. While maintaining the momentum, Melina's mounted force broke the ranks in one sweeping motion, and this diversion allowed for the human allies to finally gain the upper hand. And whenever a wing from the army seemed to be losing, Melina would sweep upon them like a torrent. And she never lingered in one part to avoid getting surrounded by the infantrymen. And while her men swept back, they shot their enemy with arrows. And this attack and run strategy proved to be the tipping point. And so Melina had a siege battle. She had her necromancers activate the renovance, and each body had been relocated to key positions, and some were buried in the center of the barracks. And the sudden appearance caused plenty of confusion. And the human generals leading the charge against Edinburgh said to Melina's troops, "Take these ladders and climb up the wall." And Melina did not acknowledge his command, nor did she try to argue with him. In a synchronized motion, her army got out of the range of the arrows and waited patiently for the revenants to lower the gates. And the general was not used to the stoic silence when dealing with soldiers, nor was he used to being disobeyed. Again he barked orders, but neither Melina nor her soldiers said anything, and Boris, who was riding with Melina, suddenly chuckled. Indeed, Melina's army had received quite the esoteric training, and most soldiers were trained to follow the orders of the highest ranking individual. Melina's crew just did as she was told. And they had the whole series of choreographed battle formation and fighting style printed upon their very soul. And after long years of training, they could perform Melina's battle maneuvers flawlessly. When it came to the large-scale army battle, thinking had been completely taken out of the equation. Close to that, the human allies and Denibers were not making a dent in the fortress, and the siege weapons were pretty much useless. And Melina's army was taking a sweet repose beneath the shade of the woods. And Fanny, who was in the supply group, was the head cook, and said it was making rounds through the soldiers, checking for mandible wounds and ouchies. And the horses were taking a well-deserved break. And Fanny sat beside Melina to undress her, and she guided her mistress to a nearby brook. And Melina washed the stains of blood and dirt from her fragile frame. And Fanny asked, "How much time do we have left?" "We can't march until midnight, and I have ordered the men to sleep early in preparation for a nighttime excursion. In the meantime, I have another diversion plan," said Melina. "Oh, please do tell," insisted Franny. Well, you know how I have these revenants," started Melina. "Yes," said Franny. "They have been ordered to lower the gates, and how they go about it is up to them. And it's always interesting to see what those ancient warriors come out with, and they usually last a lot longer when used at night. And also the feudals only have this feudal only has 2 revenants, and we would have gotten more, but it's been 5 generations since that merchant caravan has been allowed in town, and for good reason, or since considered," said Melina sadly. Oh my, does this mean we're going to have to do a prolonged siege battle?" asked Franny. "I hope not, because if I get bored, I might have something heavy fall on them," said Melina, pouting. Around midnight, Melina's army was wide awake after sleeping for 10 hours, and now with corn shells they played their horns to signal the skirmish, and the guards in the field all rallied around the towers and walls to defend them. And they were apparently much disappointed to see no one near the gates, and the human allies too were roused from their sleep, and they had retreated to their base camps at dusk, and only Melina's men were wide awake and refreshed. And Melina's cavalry circled around the sides of the field making ungodly noises, and the noise continued until 3 a.m. in the morning. And the same circle repeated itself twice a day, and after the 5th day, Melina yelled in a thunderous voice, "Woman of Sigisora, it is I, Melina, Cavalier of Sassari. I have come to liberate you from the shackles of your gender. If you lower the gates, I promise equal rights for women under my new regiment." Fanny, who was at the base camp, noted the 1,000 years that Melina received, and most of the years were coming from the human allies she had saved 5 days ago, and at the moment Fanny felt a shame for her humanity. Melina repeated the circle and delivered her message for another 5 days, and on the 6th day the gates of the city reluctantly opened. And seeing her chance, Melina rushed in, followed by the human allies, and the field was officially pacified by sunset. And and some of the human allies wanted to engage in classical looting, but Melina did not allow it. Also, Melina had not lost a single unit during that raid. In parallel to this, the Battle of Edinburgh had ended quickly without much incident, and Basila's unit slowly made its way towards the wall, and after 2 hours of suffering under a shower of arrows, Basila's unit had installed a destruction rune at the base of the tower, and the magic was detonated simultaneously, thus causing all the walls to crumble immediately, and with no walls, Basila's unit and human allies made quick work of the enemy. Time, bro?
18.
The first 2 victories raised a lot of red flags for Veragero. It was even alarming enough to rouse Bersamet out of his stupor. And with his band of dragon riders, Bersamet laid waste to both Edinburgh and Sigisora. And the moment that Melina's unit saw the dragon riders over the horizons, her people took to this cue to flee. And Melina was hailed as a coward all throughout the kingdom, and a good number of the people used Melina as a prime example as to why women should not lead armies. Melina stoically endured those insults while she walked the course of Sassari, and the commoners of Sassari made excuses on her behalf, and they did not blame her for fleeing from a hopeless situation. And summer came and with it the summer harvest, and the human rebellion had been greatly deflated, and even Lucrezia was starting to have doubts about Melina's plans to take the capital. And following Bersamet's tour the forest, the soldiers in Praga feudo began to mobilize, and they were scouting the forest for signs of Melina's dragon skill harvesting operation. And it was noted that only her unit wore such an armor, and the quality of armor was superior to that of normal dragon skill armors. And it was said that Sterling Guy worried about the future production of such armors, and to prevent this, he wanted to root out all of the gatherers in the forest, and he also hoped to capture whoever was making the armors. And all the armors were assembled in the forest before being shipped out, and unlike regular armors, they were made for individual persons, in order it could not be passed along. And when a different person tried to wear the armor, the scales exploded into a frenzy of shards. And this had been discovered when Guy's men had confiscated a crate of armors from a merchant caravan, and the arrows too were made of tiny scales, and the sharpness made it impossible to shoot without special hand protection. Guy sent search parties to scout the outskirts of the forest, and they were looking for any visible signs of track or footprints. Like, just imagine it's like in a fantasy game when you loot an armor from like an enemy, and then you try to put it on, and then it like instantly kills you. Cause the armor is like Buddha. It would only work for one individual. The shipments originating from the forest had increased as of late, and the pity was that the few confiscated items were only discovered a few kilometers away from the forest of the feral dragons. And there was an interval between the Praga and the forest where the goods were shipped out, and Sterling Guy hoped to discover it, and he could find the base of operation. And the first few parties circled around both sides of the forest twice, and after 2 weeks it was determined that the shipments were not using a land-based route, and following they searched the river which flowed to the forest, and when they reached the watershed, they found the rocks in the area had been disturbed recently, and there were distinct tracks headed in all directions, and the Sterling Guy noted the perplexing behavior in the dragonlings, as they were flipping stones on the ground and putting whatever scales they found in baskets, and Guy had never seen such an odd behavior among the feral dragon kind. And before he could formulate a plan, he felt an arrow shoot past his head, and then another and another, and Guy's men looked about in search of the origin point of such arrows, and the accuracy became terrifying when one of his soldiers got sniped in the eyeball. And Sterling Guy retreated from the forest deeply worried, and while retreating he noticed a large-built man sitting on one of the tree branches, and despite having a clear shot, the strange man clad in black armor did not shoot him, and Guy reached for his crossbow and he shot the man, and when the bolt made contact, the man broke into pieces. And when he came to check up on when he looked closer, he noticed that he had shot at a mirror, and he noticed that his arrow was struck in a normal surface. It was a dragon skill, and a strange roaring echoed throughout his surroundings, and it almost sounded like laughter. And it was too horrifying to be the laughter of a humanoid, and gripped by a sudden burst of terror, Sterling Guy fled for his life. The next day he sent a large group of armed men to scout the forest, and again his scout party returned with fewer men. And normally such guerrilla resistance was smoked out, and it wasn't too uncommon for them to burn entire forests where the resistance group were believed to be hiding. However, due to the presence of the feral dragons, this could not be done, And in response to this problem, Sterling Guy caught upon the lords, and the lords were famous for using bloodhounds to track criminals, and such hounds were typically used only in hunts, and the lords were the first to use them in other creative ways, and among spans and steel no hounds, and in the end, Sterling Guy decided to use some of the local hunting dogs, and he gathered a piece of cloth containing the scent of an elf, and Guy assumed that the people hiding in the forest had to be elves. And these untrained dogs spent most of their time barking at shadows or at the little feral dragons. And the draconic presence had them terrified, and again the hunting party came back with fewer men. And parallel to this, Luba's guerrilla front was hunting down Sterling Guy's men one by one, and they were using a sophisticated system of mirrors and traps to confuse their target. And Augustus and Gabes integrated to the force was a welcome boom, and they also usually hunted in pairs, and each pair was supposed to cover a large area of the land. And Augustus and Gabes were still in training, and associates traveled with Luba. And when it was their party which identified Sterling Guy, and Augustus commented, "I recognize that guy," and Luba put his finger to his lip to signal Augustus to shut up. And being trained in the old ways, Augustus still fell into the habit of talking while in the middle of a battle. And whenever they were interested in a target, an arrow would be shot near her. And Augustus was having a bit of a dilemma. His sister Lucretia had ordered her to capture Sterling Guy alive, however Melina had ordered the others to kill him on sight. And she pondered what to do, and he could not knock out Gabes and Luba to follow Lucretia's order. Or he could kill Sterling Guy and be done with the problem altogether. And noticing Augustus' indecision, Luba pointed at Sterling Guy and made a decapitation sign. Time, bro?
12 minutes.
Sighing, Augustus nodded his bow and shot Guy in the forehead. And he must have been off by a couple of centimeters, and the arrow only lightly grazed his chainmail. And this assassination attempt had been a bust, and there were more than 10 berserker soldiers a few meters away from Guy. And Luba nodded deftly and descended the tree, and Augustus followed behind. And Guy slowly descended since he was not used to climbing trees, and Augustus was almost within killing distance when Sterling Guy turned around, and he whistled, and suddenly 20 more berserkers came to his aid. And Augustus was already used to being surrounded, and he would push through them, slashing furiously, and Guy was quickly clambering back up the tree. And once he was high enough, he started sniping the berserkers one by one. And Luba fought with his giant round mace he called a Goda, and he used it to clear a pathway for Augustus while he attacked those that came from behind. And keeping always in motion, they avoided being surrounded, and they also guided their quarry to their carefully laid traps. And traps could easily be set up all over the forest, since the feral dragons were not stupid enough to fall for them. And a few targets did get their legs stuck in bear traps, and much to Luba's disappointment, their leg armor held up. And the pitfall traps were at least useful. The enemy fell backwards in a way that they could not incorporate themselves without any help, and this made them easy prey to strike down, and during the commotion, Sterling Guy slipped away. Sterling Guy resolved not to return to the forest. He would still send men with the hopes of at least tracking down the one person. However, the forest was treacherous, and most of the berserker soldiers were unfamiliar with the landscape. And from time to time, something that they did, said, or thought caused an unwarranted attack by a male feral dragon, and they would be most aggressive near the nesting grounds, and dealing with the rebels in front was starting to become an expensive enterprise. However, Veragedon's sovereign rights depended solely on the ability to quell down rebellions. And after a month, Sterling Guy started losing his patience, and the dragon inspecting at his equipment were also not helping. And while resting in camp, Augustus said to Luba, "Maybe we should infiltrate the fort and take Sterling Guy out once and for all. We do not have the manpower for such a full-scale attack, for such a direct assault," said Luba. "Having him out of the way will increase our chances of victory," insisted Augustus. "If you want my mate to die, you are welcome to try and slay them. I, however, am not fond of sending my men to their death," said Luba sarcastically. "He does have a point, Augustus. We have not suffered any casualty, and we have taken out at least 300 men, not counting the ones who got eaten by the dragons," said Garrus, laughing. "This aversion only works as long as there are men willing to come to fight us, and the raids have become less and less frequent as of late." "I propose we provoke them," said Augustus. "And how do you propose we do that?" asked Luba. "We scale the walls and attempt an assassination," said Augustus. "You are welcome to try, however the trees were arranged in such a way as to avoid them being used to scale the walls," said Luba. "We could hitch a ride in one of the little feral dragons," said Garrus. With the right kind of bait, we could ride a little dragon and scale the wall, said Luba, formulating a plan. The next day, Augustus tried to scale the walls using a dragon, and after attempting the enterprise 5 times, he gave up on the idea altogether. Even by accident, the pharaoh dragons refused to play the role of beast of burden, and they seemed to sense Augustus' intentions, and they naturally shunned away from her whenever she came with a saddle. But no, you're not riding me. Oh. Her few attempts gave Luba plenty to laugh at, and when Augustus returned to camp, he gave him a rope and a hook, and then he said, I had this great invention called a rope, and you can use it like so. Very funny, said Augustus in anger. Try to keep things simple, girl, said Luba, and he added, Melina sent you a care package when she heard that you wanted to do a suicide mission. Time, bro?
8 minutes.
2 orcs brought a large crate, and inside was the heaviest looking armor that Augustus had ever seen. And the entire armor consisted of scales placed on top of one another, with a ceramic coating to harden them into a solid form, and each scale had a unique magic circle for decoration. And Lua explained, this armor has a flow spell, and while you wear it, it feels as light as a feather, and you can use it to scale the walls as dust. Lua got a piece of the armor and he placed it on the ground. It hovered a few inches away from the ground, and by putting a bit of motion, it seamlessly glided up a tree. And Goddess said, it is a neat trick and all, but what's this armor made of? What's this armor made by Ceric? Yes, what about it? Asked Luba. All the crap he makes breaks. I wouldn't be surprised if his armor broke in the middle of the battle, said Goddess, frowning. It's fine, said Luba. I have a plan to bail you out should you get in trouble. That won't be necessary, said Augustus. I plan to atone for my sins with my death. Both Luba and Goddess rolled their eyes when they heard this, and Sir Augustus was determined to see his stupid plan till the bitter end. And late at night, Augustus was armed from head to toe, and the holes of her eyes were so small that Augustus could barely see the holes of her armor. She had to squint. They were also plated with obsidian to protect her eyes from arrows, and he had only 2 holes for her nose, and the face was like a strange, roaring, rat-looking animal. And the design and the white armor scales contrasted with the black underbelly made Augustus remember painful memories, and not much else could be said about the armor since it did not survive the night. Knowing full well that the time was of the essence, Augustus climbed the wall and he made his way towards what appeared to be the main barracks. And after noiselessly hovering there, he frowned when he noted that he had entered through the aviary. And one of the messenger drivers pointed to another building and said dryly, the barracks are that way. A cold icy wind chilled Augustus from head to toe. Time, bro?
5 minutes, 30 seconds.
He was starting to fear that there might be cracks in the armor already, and he could at least rely on his new sword and buckle, and they were at least not made by Ceric. And when he was near enough to the barracks, one of the sentries spotted him, and he was about to give the signal, but he dropped dead for a reason. Augustus found this strange, but he continued on his way. Just before opening the door to the barracks, Augustus noticed the sound of somebody laughing in the distance, and this sound was muffled by the harsh whispers of soldiers going about their business. As soon as he entered through the back wall, there were like 20 men wide awake playing craps, and the first man yelled, sound the alarm! And about 7 men ran towards the signal while the others grabbed their weapons and started fighting Augustus. And in no time the bell and the shouting deafened his ears, and he was drowned all of the outside distractions, and he started making his kills. And the armor was superb, and a rain of blows and arrows were not enough to make a dent in him. And he was also experimenting on how to best use his new maneuverability. And in no time he had mastered the new armor, making impossible leaps over the walls. And in the end, Augustus traded her sword and shield for a sick claymore on display in one of the weapon racks. And when he grabbed hold of it, the runes of the armor inscribed themselves on the surface of the sword. And he started slashing through his enemies with the new enchanted sword. And the added torch shattered even the strongest armor. And his fighting was cut short when a ballista shot him against the wall. The armor held, but the force of the impact broke a few ribs. And he had gotten careless. Fighting through the pain, he tried to run in the direction of the ballista operator. However, the siege weapon was automatic, and a flurry of successive shots pinned him against the wall, and he cowered in the form of a ball to minimize the impact, and he started sweating when he heard his shoulder armor crack. And before they cracked open, the ballista got jammed, and the operator started cursing, trying to fix it, and Augustus drew the sword at the ballista, breaking it and killing the operator. Augustus pondered a bit on what to do next, and he took from the ground the ballista large shovel, and he put them inside a nearby clothing basket. And while making his way through the rooms, he used the large arrows as a spear. And as he impaled someone with it, as soon as he imagined the arrow was losing its point, and eventually he started running into people, and soon the entire barracks was set ablaze, and since it was a wooden building, it easily caught fire, and a cold wind swept around it, and he could breathe again. And by this time he found all of the happy coincidence odd, and he figured that a wizard from the party must be helping him from afar. And when the impetus, he left the barracks, and this time he had enough reflex to dodge the ballista, and they had aimed at all of the possible exits, and Augustus ran in the direction of the manor, and he reasoned that they would not risk shooting their own. And he had judged correctly. The ballista's range did not go as far as the plantation manor, and once inside he scanned all of the faces quickly until he saw Sterling Guy. And pointing his spear and arrow, he said, "You are coming with me, Sterling Guy." "Fine, whatever," said Sterling Guy, getting up. And Augustus was taken aback by his cooperation, and while escorting him, Augustus had failed to notice that he was purposely taking his dear sweet time to leave the manor. And once outside, he said to his man, "Stand down." And Augustus poked him with an arrow tip, and then she said, "Hurry up." "What's the rush? You already got who you wanted," said Sterling Guy pitifully. Augustus threw Sterling Guy over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, and he failed to notice the guy reaching for a small dagger in his waist, and he swiftly stabbed Augustus' shoulder through the crack in the armor, and cursing, Augustus threw Sterling Guy on the ground and went to harpoon him, and the shoulder armor finally crumbled, and seconds later a well-shot ballista shot her in the direction of her exposed shoulder. And before the kill shot struck him, a dark shadow fell over him, and Augustus covered his head to shield himself from the heavy object, and he was able to make out the large draconic form of Basila. And riding her was Melina, wearing only the top of a silver armor, while with a white overskirt and a golden sash and ornamental leather boots, and her long blonde hair fluttered carelessly in the wind in the breeze. And aware of the new source of danger, the ballista shot at Melina's dragon, and she effortlessly parried the incoming arrows with her long sword. And Basila gingerly placed Augustus behind Melina, who was riding on the neck and just after the wings. And instead of shooting fire, Basila shot slashbacks towards the siege weapons. And once she was taken sufficient height, she landed in the forest after slightly shrinking. And after dismounting, Augustus asked, "Why are you here?" "A little birdie told me you wanted to do a suicide mission," explained Melina. "You sure let them kill me. As I am now, I am nothing but a burden," said Augustus pitifully. "You are my pet, Augustus, and as my rattle, I am responsible for you, and I'm not going to allow them to kill you," said Melina sternly. Augustus felt a faint smile in his lips, and he was glad that he was still wearing his helmet. He did not want Melina to know that her quirky exposition had made him happy. Time, bro? Bro?
Less than a minute.
Alright, bye-bye and God bless.